Hello everyone and welcome back to Make Better Wedding Films. My name is Ben. I will be your host, and before we get into the show, we've just got a couple of announcements to get through. Well, actually just one major announcement, which is to let you guys know that we are running an editing contest to round out the year. We've partnered with our buddies at MusicBed to give away 3 annual MusicBed subscriptions. So if you guys want a year worth of free music for your wedding films, make sure to click the link below in the show notes or just head over to our website. You'll find all the info there. Basically, you guys can submit your films. We're going to be picking the best of 3 different categories. We've got a category for best trailer, so films under a minute, got a category for best film in general, and we've also got a category for best use of music. So yeah, make sure you guys head on over to the website, submit your films to be in for a chance to win a year worth of free music with MusicBed. Entries close on December 10th, so yeah, make sure you guys head over and submit your films now. You might be looking at aspirational, world-famous, amazing wedding filmmakers and be thinking, if only I could shadow them, if only I could watch them work, I could learn their secret sauce, the thing that makes them stand out from the rest. The truth of the matter is, there is no secret sauce. Everyone is nervous on a wedding day. Everyone finds directing uncomfortable. Everyone gets that awkward, squirmy feeling before they walk into a room full of strangers first thing on a wedding day. Once you know that everyone is uncomfortable, even the filmmakers that you're looking up to right now and think they've got all their shit together, you'll realize that what you actually have to do is get comfortable being uncomfortable. My name is Ben, and this is Make Better Wedding Films.
When I first started out, I faked it till I made it a lot
Yeah.
because I didn't really know what I was doing. But now I'm at the point where if I am a little nervous, it's really just in the first 10 minutes of me walking into, say, the bride's room or whatever. And then after that, it usually passes and I'm good for the whole rest of the day. Usually when I realize, oh, the bride's more nervous than anyone here or whatever other people, there's no need to be nervous. And then once I start shooting, because for me, I love shooting. I just feel like creating art, filmmaking in general, photography is what I was created to do. So when I just start doing it and start telling the couple to do stuff and start getting really cool shots, it overtakes me, and all of a sudden I'm in my element and I'm just not thinking about anything else than just creating really cool art.
And I think I've definitely subconsciously taken some of those, I think a lot of us have used those exact same lines when we first walk in the morning, and that's sort of the first thing you say is happy wedding day, and you kind of go from there. And it's a very natural kind of thing that I think we all pick up either from seeing other people or other photographers. We've all kind of fallen into this similar kind of script. But I think throughout the day, I don't know, me especially, become less and less confident around exactly what to say. And I think especially when it comes to things like the portrait session and directing couples and stuff, have you found some other kind of techniques that have helped you sort of gain the confidence when you're in that more kind of driver's seat role?
Yeah. So I have a good amount to say on that. So when I first started filming weddings, I was very not confident. And what I realized was what not confident people do is they fix not confidence with overconfidence. So they over direct, and it makes them look confident, but actually they're terrified inside because they're so scared of letting something naturally happen in front of them that they feel they need to micromanage every little thing. And I had a huge mindset shift when first couple of years I was shooting weddings. I was very much directorial because that was also kind of the life I came from in terms of directing commercials where you have control over every single aspect. And it wasn't until I worked with a photographer that I really admired, and a couple of photographers that I really admired, where I wanted my film work to kind of feel like their photo work. And I remember shooting with them and literally having my mind blown because their work looks so perfect to where I'm like, how the heck do you get a couple to do that? How is that such an emotional, artistic shot other than you sitting there and posing everyone to a T? And your work just looks so perfect. And when I shot with these photographers, I was like, are you even working? Like, because I think this is the weird notion that the best photographers and filmmakers are very extroverted, and they're talking all the time. They're always making people feel comfortable, because that's kind of like the loudest photographers usually are the ones that have all the reels on Instagram and things on TikTok and have all the talking head videos. And it just, getting into the industry, you think that's what a photographer is, or that's what a filmmaker is. And I remember at these weddings, this photographer would be like an amazing photographer, like incredible, shooting like $10,000-$15,000 weddings, and they'd just be chilling. They'd be like, I'm gonna get a shot here, get a shot here. They're just small talking with the bridesmaids or the groomsmen, and they're like, hey, don't worry about it, you can, during portraits, just get whatever you need. And I'm like, I'm so used to working with photographers who are so like, you can only get 2 minutes, I gotta get in. But what I've quickly realized is that more experienced photographers are, not all the time, but usually the way more chill they are, and the less experienced they are, the way more control freak they are. And so, kind of back to that question of, I think I made the mistake early on thinking that it was my job to make couples beautiful, or make them artistic, or make them into this cinematic masterpiece. And this actually is not fully our job. Like, it would be if we were making like a feature film and we have control over every step of the process. But I realized is, when I would book couples, and even went back to the booking process, I so wanted to shoot a certain type of wedding that I would book couples that might not be my ideal client. And then on the wedding day, I would like put them in poses that were cool, but weren't them at all. Or like, I do a cool elopement, and I'm like, man, we're doing this elopement in this amazing location, but the bride and the groom don't really match the style of like trendiness that I really want to shoot for this to be like a feature on my Instagram or YouTube or whatever. And so then I would recommend like, hey, you should think about getting like this dress or this suit, or kind of doing these florals. But then it would get to the day and it just wasn't them. And then I had to direct way, way, way more. And so what I've realized is kind of been the secret sauce is knowing what kind of photography work I really enjoy, and what kind of couples are kind of gravitated to that photography film work. And I'm kind of at the place in my career where I only do 5 or 6 weddings, and I chase after those specific weddings where I know the couple is already cool. They like, I don't have to do anything. They're already going to have an amazing trendy dress and vibey suit and florals, and they're going to already fall into natural poses. And one of my criteria has become, it's not like a deal breaker, but if the couple is a photographer, or they're comfortable taking photos of themselves, and maybe they have some degree of online presence on Instagram or TikTok or things like that, I actually find I vibe really well with those couples. And those are the best days to where it comes to posing. Like this last wedding I just shot this last weekend, bride was a photographer. I end up doing a lot of photographers' weddings, a lot of florist weddings, a lot of people who are into style and fashion. And on the wedding day, it has made my life so much easier. Like for portraits, this last weekend, I did like nothing. Like, and that's become more my go-to stance for portraits is I hardly direct at all. And I focus all my time and energy of finding good looking couples who are comfortable in front of the camera. If I do that, the rest of the day takes care of itself. So like, this last weekend, I kind of let the photographer, like one of the tricks that I'll do is during portrait session, I let the photographer take over for like 5 or 10 minutes. And I just kind of sit back and I try to see what is the vibe of this couple. Like, what is the bride comfortable with? What is the groom comfortable with? As I see the photographer put them into various poses, I'm taking a lot of mental notes of, okay, who are they and what are their vibe? And then I can come in, and usually what I do with poses is I just have something vague in my mind of like, I usually start with, hey guys, I just want you to stand facing each other and just, look in each other's eyes. And I usually bring music that I have like a little JBL clip recorder that I'll put on my belt loop or on my camera bag, and I'll play that. And I'll just say, hey, listen to the music and have a moment. And I'm just going to shoot around you guys. And oftentimes what I find is I get the most emotional moments there because they're just listening to the music and they naturally fall into maybe a hug or a kiss, and I'm trying to think about what are their hands doing? What are their eyes doing? What is the dress doing? Is there any wind? What are the florals doing? And I'm also listening to the music. And instead of me coming with a preconceived notion of what exactly I want this post to be, I'm trying to think about if I was literally behind a computer right now, editing this moment, what would I want to see? And I start listening to the music and vibing out on it. And I'm like, it becomes like a choose your own adventure thing. And I'm like, oh man, hey, kiss her forehead. Or like I'll notice they do a look and I'll be like, hey, do that again. And I'll just give those little prompts as I kind of like circle around them for a minute and a half or so. And I'm just looking, I'm listening more than I'm talking to everything they're naturally doing. And if they do something that's really rad, I'll ask them to do it again and I'll get, that moment kind of locked in. But my portraits have become a lot more like that, way more casual and just kind of letting it flow. But I will say, like, there is a degree of prep that goes into it because what I love to do is I found if I immerse myself in exactly the type of vibe I want to capture on the day before the day, it's a lot easier to capture that vibe. So versus like if I just spend 5 minutes before the day kind of saving some of my favorite poses and then go into the day, I'm not getting as much creative content as I really want to. So what I usually do is the day before, I will like block off an hour or two and I will just go through my favorite photographers. I'm not even looking at poses necessarily. I'm just trying to let like that style really kind of wash over my mind, just kind of like be in it. And then I'm looking at some of my favorite wedding films that I've done and kind of just really kind of getting myself into that mode, into that mindset. And then what I'll do is I'll make an album on my phone, on an iPhone. I have a folder, and then I like to break portraits into 5 categories. I find that if I have a pose or so in each of these categories, I'm usually really solid in terms of content. So one of them is artistic category in terms of poses and stuff like that. So that is like very out there poses with a couple. So this would be like a pose where the bride is looking off to the right and there's wind blowing through her hair. And then the groom is like 20 feet back off to the side, looking in the opposite direction. And maybe, there's a crazy silhouette going on, like something that's very out of the norm. That would be an artistic pose. So that would be like and I would have that exact photo of that exact pose in that folder in my phone. And I have like 20 or so poses like that. Then I have another category that's more intimate poses. These are my favorite ones. They're the more romantic ones. So you could think of, cuddling, like foreheads together, bride leaning on the groom's shoulder, something that just feels more natural, more intimate. And I have a bunch of those poses saved on my phone. Then I have fun poses because I find a lot of videographers, and this is kind of pet peeve of mine, is we just treat couples like these statues and they're real people. And I love to have fun. My couples love to have fun, that I always go out of my way to get them like laughing together. Like that's part of my portrait session, not just putting them in sexy, cool poses, but I'm like, guys, I want you to walk towards me and just like bump hips together, or like I'm going to play a song and you guys just start dancing, or like, because what I found are some of my favorite moments of the day is being like the couple just acting like there's no camera there and it's just being themselves. Like those are some of my favorite moments. So I have a category on my phone for like various fun prompts that I'll use with them to get them laughing and things like that. And then, so let's see, fun, artistic, intimate. And then I also have like a individual bride section. So I have all these different categories on my phone that the night before and then on my way to the wedding, I can quickly look through these categories and have them internalized in my head so that during portraits, if I need to do a certain prop and maybe there's kind of a lull in the portrait session, I can just quickly go on my phone and be like, okay, I've already done one pose in the fun one. I've already done one in the artistic one. I need like 2 or 3 in the intimate one. So then I can just click on that folder. They're all there. And I have no shame too. Like, if I want to get a cool pose, I'm legit walking up to the couple, showing them the photo of the pose. Yeah. There's no like, I'm not trying to be cool. I'm not trying to look like I have it all together. I'm like, guys, this would be sick. And they're like, okay, yeah, cool. And they just like, okay. And they're looking at the phone like, let me see this. And then the bride's getting all into it. It's like a challenge for them. Like that looks sick. And they have fun kind of Legoing themselves into it. Because what I found is show it to them, they think I'm weird. They're like, wait,
Yeah.
what? I don't understand. And you're like, but it'd be
Mm.
cool. And they're getting all awkward. Just show them the stinking pose and then
Yeah.
do it. It'll make it go way faster. And so that level of preparedness mixed with, once you're prepared, once you've done all that time and research, you have everything on your phone, just let it flow. And I found kind of the last thing with portraits that really helps is overshooting. Like, just, again, some of my worst portrait sessions have not been because I'm not talented at the time, or I don't have the right poses in my head. But some of my worst portrait sessions have been because I'm scared to ask something of the couple, or like I'm scared to just go 5 minutes over because like the sun is in the perfect spot. And I'm like, the photographer is saying, we got to go. And the coordinator is saying, we got to go. And I get timid and I just don't do the thing. But some of my best portrait sessions, strangely enough, like a lot of my films where I'm like, man, those shots are incredible. A lot of those shots, even though they look very serene and peaceful, the actual environment of that wasn't as, it was like near the end of the portrait session. I just saw something really cool.
Go.
And literally I'm like, guys, and I want to be careful because I don't want all these videographers being like, okay, now we can just be in charge. It's more like, hey, couple, I just have this one cool thing I really want to try. I know we got to go, but I think it would be sick. Do you want to do it? And if they say no, you don't push the envelope. But more than often, if you're excited, they will say, sure, let's do it. Because you got to remember who's in charge of the day, not the coordinator, not the photographer, not you. It's the couple. So if you have the coordinator saying, we got to go, or the photographer like, we got to go. But then the couple's like, no, we got to stay. Doesn't even matter what anyone else says. And those have been some of my best moments. So again, coming full circle back to what I'm really good at is something that like makes me nervous or fearful and just doing it. So as a videographer, what I kind of want you guys to think about on the next wedding during portraits is don't be afraid. You're never going to get to the point where you feel completely confident. That's another thing I want to say. You're never going to feel completely confident. I mean, you might just be a social butterfly and you're like, man, nerves, I've never felt them. I'm just a robot. I'm insane. You're always going to feel some degree of nerves. What you have to get over is you have to learn how to make decisions within nervousness. That is the key to being a successful wedding filmmaker. And the only way you do that is listening to yourself and say, I'm nervous, and asking for that extra shot. Or like at this last wedding, a good example is, so the couple rented this old, like amazing white Mustang, and the coordinator was texting me on my phone, like, hey, guests are like, we need to get going. And the photographer's like, okay, we need to get going. And they were kind of getting their last shot. But in the back of my mind, it's like, man, they rented this old Mustang. I really, really just would love to get a shot from like me in the photographer's car, like sitting down, them in the Mustang, the photographer driving, I'm in their trunk, and like I'm getting this cool like shot of the Mustang. It was in the desert. And so like how cool would that be? They're driving along the road, I'm in the back of the truck. This is like an intense setup. And I got nervous before. I'm like, this is going to take a really long time, but like if I don't get it, and I was having this whole internal battle, like literally, and I've shot weddings for like 12 years and I'm still like, I don't know, like, is the couple going to get upset with me? Is the photographer going to get upset with me? Is the coordinator going to like pump me when I get there? And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to do it. I was like, hey guys, this would be sick. Can we just, like, I know we got to go, but like, can we just do this? And they're like, oh yeah, that'd be sweet. Let's do it. And it ended up being one of the coolest things. I'm in the back of the photographer's trunk. We're driving. The couple's loving it. I have the bride. It's like this cool, like rock and roll desert wedding. She's like outside of the trunk of the Mustang. She's in the passenger seat of the Mustang, and I have her like step out of the passenger seat while the car's moving, and she like has her bouquet up in the air. And I'm like, it was so sick. And if I hadn't overcome my nervousness, it would have never happened. And then I was like, we're really close to the venue. I'm just, hey, can I get in the car with you? And there's literally like no room in the car. It's a little convertible Mustang, and there's literally like I don't know, potato sized space in the back, and I'm like contortion. Like I'm probably gonna die, but like it'll be great. And I'm like back there, my legs are like sprawled all out. It's like super awkward, and I'm like, guys, let's just and they're like, this is so cool. Yeah, let's drive. And then the couple's like invested in it, like, oh, we're in this cool Mustang. This is sweet. And then they're holding hands, the sun's setting, and you can see the moon in the background. You get the like orange glow of the whole desert, and you have all Joshua trees. And they're driving. I'm in the back of the car, and they're like, hey, do you want us to kiss? I'm like, what, you're driving? That just sounds really dangerous. And they do it. And like all of this amazing stuff. It was like out of a movie, literally like a movie scene. And if I hadn't just asked, it would have never happened. So that's the key thing. You're always going to be, more than likely, unless it's a really chill elopement, you're always going to be nervous during portrait session because of something. The key thing is just getting over that and asking the couple for what you know is going to be cool and just letting it happen.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, like I can definitely, man, I just so relate to that feeling of like, just there always being this like underlying like nervous energy there, and just kind of like feeling like you have to push through it. And I think a lot of us have that kind of, I don't know, like imposter syndrome complex of feeling like we're the only ones feeling that. Right. Like everyone else has got their shit together and everyone else is confident, like, you know, like directing couples and like controlling energy on the day, and everyone else is good. It's just me who's like, you know, floundering through this. And I think like it's a good reminder that like everybody is nervous. Everybody's figuring out their own way to kind of work through and just find that confidence to go, yeah, I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to like action this idea that I've got in my head. Because I'm sure a lot of us have like had these ideas and let them go and just gone, okay, yeah, when it's time to go, we'll get in the car and we'll go, and we're not going to do the thing that's in my head.
You're kind of like kicking yourself, like, man, only I was. Yeah. And I think one reassuring thing. So I brought a buddy along for this last wedding I shot. He's pretty new to weddings, and he'd been watching, you know, Forrester's work. He's like, oh, I love your work. So I needed a second shooter. So I brought him along. And at the end of the day, he told me, he was like, man, this was really weird. He's like, not to diminish what you do on the day, but like I came second shooting thinking I was going to see something totally different than what I do, in terms of you were going to have everything together. You weren't going to be nervous. I was thinking there was going to be some secret recipe of what I like don't do at weddings that you do. And he's like, one of the things that just blew my mind was how normal the whole, and how like you were stressed out. Like there was parts of the day where you're like, oh shoot, the ceremony's about to start and we're barely getting cameras together. Or like, you're trying to corral the photographer and kind of work with them and things like that. And he's like, it just felt so human. And I realized, oh my gosh, like I can do that. Like that's nothing different than the nerves that I face on the day. Of course, he's like, yeah, you have certain systems in place and you've been doing this longer. So in terms of what you're shooting on the camera, it might be different than what I am. But in terms of how you're like handling yourself on the day, and in terms of the pressure that you face throughout the day, it's no different than what I'm facing. And I thought that was really key, because I think a lot of people want to shadow very successful filmmakers in terms of like Went Reverie or Eric Floberg or John and Nick. And they're like, man, if I could just be there, like some magical fairy dust is going to rub off on me and they do something totally different. But it's like, no, we're human just like you. We get nervous. Wedding days are unbelievably stressful. Things don't work out, and, you know, you just power through. And oftentimes, even now after shooting weddings for 12 years, there's times where I'm like, man, I just didn't feel confident in that day. I don't know what it was. Like, I just felt like I was barely making it through. I think I might have gotten a couple cool portraits. I had that awkward moment with the photographer. I'm not sure. And then literally in the edit room, something all just comes together. I'm like, that was a stinking awesome film. And I like didn't feel confident on it on the wedding day. So I think so much of our struggle as artists is just, pushing through that nervousness and just doing what we feel right in that moment and trusting our intuition. And some things hit and some things don't. And you just continue to move on.
Yeah. Amazing, man. Yeah, no, that's really good, solid, I think needed advice for a lot of people out there. And there's so much, like, I think, because I came into this conversation like kind of having an idea of where it might go, and we've kind of like covered like sort of, I don't know, like one small section, but like in like really amazing detail, more than I kind of realized. And I feel like the most sensible thing to do is kind of like encapsulate this conversation as a thing. And then there's all these other aspects of like cinematography on the day that I kind of feel like we need to like approach like in a separate conversation, because I don't want to like do them, you know, and
sorry about that. I'm a talker.
And just
so.
no, don't apologize, because it's like it's amazing. And because I think you're right. I think a lot of people look at filmmakers like that they aspire to and think, yeah, there's some fairy dust, there's some magic sauce that I'm missing, and if only I could shadow them, I'll get to see it. And I think the reality is that we're all we're all approaching this the same way. We've all got our own nervousness, and we're all pushing through that. And when it comes to the confidence of like interacting with your couples on the day and showing that confidence, it is kind of a case of just sort of pushing through and finding ways to push through on that. And I think your advice about like the portrait session and having those kind of go-to poses that if energy does dip, you've got something to grab, is a great piece of advice. You know, just having something to fall back on, kind of like we were talking about at the beginning of the show with your like magician stuff. It's like just setting those parameters, right, so that so that like in those social interactions, you've got something to fall back on.
Exactly.
You know, if the energy dips. So I think that's a really important thing for people to, I guess, if people are looking for, you know, a takeaway. Everyone's looking for a takeaway, something to take from here and apply to their work, other than just we're all feeling the same. I think that's probably
off of that, you go for in terms of so having a system of some sort is extremely important, because like you can count on being nervous and stressed out. That's something you can count on the wedding days that you're not. Take it as a blessing and just go through the day. But more than likely, you can count on nervousness and stress. So how can you prepare for being nervous and stressed? Well, you can either do nothing and then you're pretty much fish out of water, or you can have a system. So that's actually one of the things that I noticed early on, that because of my social anxiety, because of my tendency to get nervous and stressed out, I needed to have some sort of training wheels to fall back on when things went badly, and they always do. And so that's one of the big things with one of my courses that I have, which is Craft 5K Wedding Films. And that's me over years and years and years. What I did is on a piece of paper or on an Apple Note or whatever it is, I wrote down every single aspect of a wedding day. Because wedding days, they're all the same. You know, couple gets ready, they maybe do a first look, they get married, big party after. Like, it doesn't really change. I mean, unless you're doing an Indian wedding. I don't do Indian weddings, but by and large, weddings are very similar. And so knowing that, like, if you don't know what to do on a wedding day, that's kind of your fault, because they're like all the same in terms of like, it's on you to write down and say, okay, what shots am I going to get every time for groom prep? What shots am I going to get every time for bride prep? What shots am I going to get every time for portraits? Now, of course, this is more of like what you fall back on, but it's always good to have the system in place. So like, if something tragic happens in your life, say your dad dies, or you know, you get really sick, or you get in a big argument with your spouse the night before, or something where you're just not emotionally there on a wedding day, you have this to fall back on, to where you can be like, even though my heart is literally reeling because of my life is falling apart, you can walk into a bride room and just start with, okay, this is what I do. I say hi to the bride. I say this line, and then I go mic up the dress if that's what I do. And then I get the bride, because I've written it out before. I get these 3 shots of her, you know, doing makeup. I ask the makeup artist to do blush, and I shoot a close-up, a medium shot, and a wide, and I push into the door and make it really artsy. And all of this seems really boring and rote, and you're like, man, you're just sucking all the creativity out of my life, David. I just want to be, you know, special little butterfly that like spurts out creative genius every second. And you can, trust me, you can. But having that system, it gets the heart moving. It's kind of, you got to think about it like warming up before a workout. You don't just go in and start lifting your heaviest weight. You got to go start at 50%, then 75%, and then 90%. And you gradually get up to where you're benching what you normally bench. And this is what the system does on the wedding day. It allows the cogs to get turning without you being creatively 100% right away. It kind of gets things lubricated and things moving. And so by having that whole thing written out, and that's kind of what I teach in the Craft 5K course, is what my system is. And then also it's so helpful to fall back on, where in the middle of the day, whatever reason, things go horrible. Say you have no time for portraits. Well, you have that system to fall back on. Or say you have no time for decor. You're like, okay, I have no time to be creative. What are the bare minimum 4 shots that I know I need to get because I have 5 minutes? There's nothing I can do about it. I have 5 minutes, the couple's coming in. That's when you fall back to your system that I've memorized my system at this point, and I have it in my phone. Every shot, I have images, whole thing, to where I could quickly look at it in a moment of stress, uncertainty, or even if I haven't shot a wedding in like 4 years, I could pull up, and like if I have to shoot a wedding in the next 30 minutes, I could pull up the system on my phone, say all my gear's ready, and I could quickly go through it, and I can know exactly what's expected of me, and I can get myself from 0 to 100 way faster than if I didn't have it. So that's kind of what I talk about in the whole Craft 5K course, and how you kind of take a very practical approach to getting past nerves head on. And then once you have that as kind of your training wheels, it's way easier for you to take risks because you have a emergency plan. So it's the same thing with finances. It's so much easier to invest in Bitcoin or to invest heavily in the stock market when you have a good 6 months emergency fund, because you know, hey, if I screw this up, at least I have this. And I found on a wedding day, I'm way more risky because I know, hey, if this doesn't work out, I know I can always fall back to this plan.
Yeah, you've got your insurance plan. Absolutely. I think, that's a great, that's great advice. That's great. And I think, because I think like there is a lot of creativity that can be found within process. I think like I find process as a really good like lubricator for creativity. It helps warm you up. It helps like give you a good foundation to go, okay, like I know I've got this is my safety net, this is my insurance policy, everything on top of this is now gravy. And I can play around, I can take risks, I can do all these things
well, it's kind of like like with kids, right? So when they're oftentimes most creative when they feel the safety of their parents there, of like, hey, you can mess up because I'm there to pick you up, kind of thing. And every adult's really just a kid in a grown-up's body, for being honest, and we really gravitate towards those things too. And I think one of the best things you can do for your creativity is give yourself limits, because in the abundance of choices, chaos ensues. But if you give yourself only a couple options in terms of boundaries of like, this is my process, this is what I can do, your heart feels safe. And I think one of the most important things to creativity is you feeling safe as a person. Because when you feel safe, then who you actually are, that weird artistic person, feels, because so often as artists, we feel like if we actually let that part of us out, we're going to be shut down. And then that's like who we are that's actually being shut down. So that cuts to the core. So we oftentimes put on a face, put on a template, because if that gets shut down, at least we can say, well, that wasn't really me. So that was just like so they're not actually rejecting me. But if you can actually get yourself safe through creative limitation, through processes, and then allow that part of you to come out, that's where the real magic happens. And more often than not, it'll be a safe place for that to do that. So limits and processes are key.
Beautiful. Amazing advice, man. That was fantastic. And I think a great place for us to sort of wrap up today's conversation. But if people do want to, I guess, find out like more about the the education services that you offer, like 5K, like crafting 5K films and your other courses and presets and stuff, where can they find, I guess, like more education from you?
Yeah, so I do a lot of education stuff for wedding filmmakers, and if you want to learn more about it, I have a bunch of courses, presets, go to theactof.co. And if you can't find it there because it just launched on Google, so it might not be crawled yet, so it may not come up. If you can't find it there, just go to my Instagram, Forestry Films, and or you can search The Active on Instagram and you can find it there. Tons of ways to connect with me, but that's the best way to contact me. Ask me about the courses, when they're coming out next, everything like that.
Awesome. And we'll obviously have a link below if you're listening to this on the podcast or on YouTube. So we'll have that all linked below, so you won't have to go hunting too far. What are we going to do?
It's not like we can put links here.
We will have a link in the show notes for you guys to find that. But yeah, David, thank you so much, man. That was amazing. That was a really great conversation. It was great to learn from you, and I just get that reassurance that, you know, we're all faking it till we make it.
Yeah. Well, it was awesome being on, and this is rad. Thanks so much.
Okay. Alrighty. That's going to do us, guys. See you all next time.